He's an American icon. He's got a gold medal to prove it. The greatest athlete in the world.
The world champion, Dan O'Brien.
Dan O'Brien.
Dan O'Brien, one of the highest scoring decathletes in world history.
What the hell actually goes on in the Olympic Village? Are some of the rumors true?
How bizarre that you went to the same university of the 4 people that were murdered.
Where did you live? You know the house?
Yeah, I do remember that house.
Reebok come to you and say, we got an idea. You versus Dave. So we're going to spend $30 million campaign. What was your first reaction? Holy shit, I'm going to be world famous.
Dan and Dave are famous overnight. 15,000 people just showed up that day. I got to win the gold medal. To get the medal and share that with 100,000 people in the U.S. Stadium, Atlanta, was something I'll never, ever forget. Guess who my broadcast partners were? Tom Hammond and O.J. Simpson.
So you win the gold for the second time in your life. Everything changes again instantly, overnight.
You're devastated. Oh my God, I'm supposed to be in the Olympics.
For 2 weeks, I didn't leave my apartment. It was that devastating.
He's an American icon. He's got a gold medal to prove it. The greatest athlete in the world. That's not hyperbole. It's a fact. The greatest athlete in the world was part of one of the biggest television commercial campaigns ever. You know him. You cheered for him. You got goosebumps. We're going to talk to him all about the Olympic experience. What the hell actually goes on in the Olympic Village? Are some of the rumors true? We're going to find out. Plus, he went to school at the University of Idaho, where one of the biggest true crime stories is about to explode this coming year in 2025 with the trial of Bryan Kohberger. He lived on the same street. We're going to learn all about that. A very special episode of 1 Degree of Scandalous. Welcome, everybody. I'm Tom Zenner, along with the one and only Caitlyn. Cato, you can't officially say you're the greatest athlete here right now. You can't do it, okay? Because in a couple minutes.
I prepared to meet Dan. I'm probably the only guy. I'm wearing a jock and a cup. I'm doing everything athletic just to talk with him today. Everything. I brought him on. I even got a pair of Reeboks on. I've got, Tom, I researched. I know you probably said, Cato, when I've seen in the locker room, you wear a joke strap. Hey, Tom, lay off, man. Lay off me, man.
Cato, you wear a jock every day, don't you? I mean, you got to be safe out there on the streets.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's a thong.
Look, I'm in track, or I was a track athlete. I played football. That was my main sport. I played basketball, but I ran track, and I understand track. My daughter's a Division I track athlete. I understand the game. I have such mad respect, for track athletes, but then, Cato, have you ever stopped and looked at the times and the distances that these world-class I mean, it's insane. I mean, high jump, long jump, pole vault, discus, 100-meter dash, 1,500-meter run. I mean, you have to be good at everything. The amount of training.
At everything.
You have to be great at everything. And it's really unbelievable. And, you can't do better. There's 2 people, Cato. You know one of them. I know one of them that are Americans that have won the gold medal in the decathlon. 2 men. Well, now 1 man.
Yeah.
Bruce Jenner.
I know.
Of course. Now Caitlyn Jenner, man, we got that. That's the next. We're going to do that in 2025. We'll get all the American gold medal decathlon champions. There's 2 of them.
Well, just to set the record straight, I used to also, Tom, you probably didn't know this until today. I actually was also a man trapped in a woman's body at one time, but then I was born. So that ended that fiasco. And I kind of heard right there, Tom, it just ended.
More amazing things about Cato Caitlyn.
I can't believe it.
Unbelievable. All right, 2 big superstars of the 90s, household names, Cato Caitlyn, and let's bring him in right now. Dan O'Brien in Scottsdale, Arizona, 1996 Olympic decathlon gold medalist. Still looks like he can compete in track and field right now if he wanted to, kick somebody's ass running down the street. And of course was involved in the very, very, very famous Dan versus Dave campaign for Reebok heading into the 92 Olympics, which we are going to talk about in great length again today. So Dan, great seeing you. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Tom. Glad to be here. I might be the world's greatest athlete, but where do I get a pair of world's greatest glasses, man? Those are great. And you're telling me those aren't just sunglasses.
They are not.
Those are prescription.
I told Dan, these are prescription glasses. I'll keep saying it.
Dad, it's Tom and I are actually doing a campaign for Ray-Ban. So it's not as good as yours as Dan and Dave's. It's Tom and Cato, and we're doing but that's another story.
Yeah, it's true. It's part of my bold initiative of 2024. I will unleash my plan for 2025, Cato. I will name it and label it, and you're going to see what's going to come here in a couple of weeks. Dan, let's jump into it, man. God, 30 years ago, 32 years ago, you're getting ready for the Olympics. Right? You kind of burst on the scene, went to the University of Idaho, and there's 2 guys. It's you and it's Dave, right? You're rivals. You probably became friends. And Reebok at the time They jump on board on this because the Barcelona Olympics are coming up that summer,
92, right?
and they come to you and say, "We got an idea. You versus Dave. We're going to do a series of commercials. We're going to spend $30 million on the campaign." What was your first reaction when they came to you thinking, "Holy shit, I'm going to be world famous, before the Olympics, right? This is just going to elevate your fame." What was your first thoughts?
Well, you got to go back a little bit earlier than the 1992 because Reebok was my first endorsement deal. Okay, I came out of college in 1989, and I did burst onto the scene. I had a really cruddy college athletic experience. I didn't go to class. I got bad grades. I flunked out. I had to go to JUCO. I came back to Division One, and by the time I get out of college, I was ready to be a pro because I didn't compete much while I was in college. But I signed my deal. I signed my first endorsement deal with Reebok, and literally the next year, Reebok also signs Dave Johnson, who were the best two Americans at the time. But I win the World Championships in 1991. I just really come up in a 2-year period, win a world title, and I'm thinking, man, I'm the best. Okay, I break Bruce Jenner's American record by almost 300 points, and Reebok invites Dave and I to Orlando for these huge. There were Reebok stores all over the country, so there were sales reps there, all kinds of people, and then they got us in this room and they said, and Dave's agent was there and my agent was there, and it was crazy because I had the same agent that Bruce Jenner had his entire career. George Wallach was the guy's name. And he sought me out and I said, "Hey man, I want to do what Bruce did. I want to make the money that Bruce made." And so I was working with him. He was there and they laid this on us. And I think what's interesting is it might be the biggest risk in marketing history. All right. Reebok wanted to take two unknown guys and introduce the world to an unknown event. And they wanted to break into an unknown market. And that unknown market was a shoe industry for them. Adidas, Nike, those were the big players in the running shoe industry. And Reebok really didn't have a foothold there. They were making basketball shoes and a lot of nursing shoes and things like that, but they wanted to get into the running shoe industry. And Dave and I thought, these guys are crazy. I'm not sure why they think, we can help them sell shoes or break into that industry. But the more we listened to the pitch and the story, it was interesting. And when somebody says, "Hey, we want to make you famous," it's like, all right, I'll jump on board.
Do you know anything about being famous, by the way, kid?
Yeah. It's a great. I was in a campaign I'll tell you about with Trivial Pursuit, but I'm not gonna. Dan, I want to ask you when you're doing the spot, and the spots, by the way, if you anybody wants to go on YouTube, you see as kids Dan and Dave and the growing up period. It's a two-part question. Are you part of that process, or does someone say, "Give us all your baby pictures and any film on you," and they do it? Because that's a lot of work while you're training to do that, or do you have to hire someone to go through all your memorabilia, all the archives? So that's the first question. Second question is, I compare things to Rocky 3. And Rocky 3, I say this because Stallone becomes ultra famous, and he loses the edge, and Mr. T beats him. So I always say athletes that get paid or become famous lose the edge. First question about the memorabilia and the archives, and then go into if that cut the edge off you, or Dave, of becoming famous and instantly the notoriety. Did it hurt you in your training?
Well, first off, it was there was not a lot of collaboration. There were Reebok execs and marketing execs, and that was the thing. What I do remember is I probably spent more time with the ad agency than I did with the Reebok people, because they were the ones that were, "Hey, this is the pitch. This is this," and so I dealt with them. But it was fairly simple process. They asked, they said, "Hey, look, you got to come to LA for a week," and that was the new thing for Dave and I was shooting commercials. Television of any kind was really new for us. And what they don't tell you about TV is it's a 5 a.m. wake up call, right? It's all day, it's long days, it's sitting around for hours. And so while we shot the commercials, we would be there all day long, 10-hour day, 8 to 10, 12-hour day, and we'd really only do a couple hours worth of work. But Dave and I would be sitting there on a Tuesday afternoon thinking, everybody else is throwing javelin, everybody else is running and getting in shape. And we're sitting here munching off the craft table, uh, craft service table, and eating M&Ms and things like that. I don't think we lost our edge in any way because I was a young athlete at that time. I was coming off a world championship. I wanted to make an Olympic team. I wanted to go to the Olympics. So my edge was definitely still there because I hadn't accomplished a whole lot. And for Dave, I think it was a little bit different. He was a veteran and he had been unchallenged for quite a few years. And so me coming up, I think pushed him as well. But no, it was a fun collaboration. They told us most of the time what the commercials were going to be like, but after a while, after the first 6, 7, 8 commercials, they're like, look, let's just show up, shoot the commercials so I can go home and start training again.
Yeah, and Cato, Dan referenced the fact that it was probably the biggest risk that a marketing team has ever taken, right? Because they're unknown guys. But they were almost a sure thing because they were the best in the world. They were going to be in the Olympics and they'd be going head to head. What a storyline in Barcelona. America will know these athletes already. They'll know their background. They'll know their personalities, and now we can follow them in Barcelona. So we're going to get to that because the Olympic trials had to happen before you have to make the team. And that was a few months before the actual Olympics. But Dan, how many commercials had run by the time you get to the Olympic trials, the summer of 1992? Were you already famous? You show up and there's this phenomena, this hype. Everybody knew who you were. Had your life changed at that point already when you went to the trials?
Absolutely. What happened is my life changed overnight. We shot the commercials in 1991 in the fall, and they released them during the Super Bowl of 1992. And that Super Bowl game finishes, and Dan and Dave are famous overnight. I mean, everybody in my small town of Moscow, Idaho, where I was living and training, they certainly knew who I was, but now they knew where I lived. And any airport I went to, what was amazing though was to see the momentum throughout the year. If Dave and I were at an indoor track meet, there would be twice as many people there. I remember being at the Modesto Relays, Modesto Junior College. The place holds maybe 5,000 people. There were 15,000 people just showed up that day. I mean, and Dave was we were doing probably 2 events each. And I don't know if they particularly came out to see Dan and Dave, but it was such a phenomenon. We shot we did a photo shoot earlier in the day. And I mean, it was a lot of hype. And what you get in the decathlon is it's an early start in track and field, 9 a.m., 10 a.m. The good stuff doesn't go on till 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I mean, the good stuff, long jump, the 100 meters and things like that with Carl Lewis and the gang. So you got mom and dad and your girlfriend and your aunt and uncle who came out to watch the decathlon. But at the Olympic trials in New Orleans that year, there were 6,000, 7,000 people in the stadium at 8:39 in the morning to see Dan and Dave compete.
Amazing. And then you get there. It's hotter than hell, right? It's New Orleans
Oh.
in the dead of summer. You're already famous. Were you feeling pressure? Because it's not automatic that you're on the team, but it seemed as close as possible to automatic because you were the best in the world at that time. Not only was everybody planning on you going to the Olympics, one of you was going to win. One of you was going to walk away with the gold medal, more than likely. So you get to the trials, you got a job to do, you're getting mobbed, your life has changed. Did you have the focus? Were you ready? Were you peaking at the right time? Everything that an athlete needs to do?
So my preparation leading up to the competition was a bit of a struggle because I had run probably too many indoor meets and had some leg injuries. So but leading into the trials, I got about as healthy as I could be throughout the entire year. Okay. And pressure, you always feel pressure in the decathlon. You always feel pressure at a major championship, especially the Olympic trials or US championships, world championships, Olympic games, that sort of thing. So I can honestly say there wasn't probably more pressure. Again, the pressure came throughout the outdoor season because on a Friday or a Saturday, I'd be jumping on a plane and I'd go to a sporting goods store and sign autographs for 4 or 5 hours. There were just a lot of interruptions throughout the year, and it was fun. It was a good time, but it was also there was a lot of interruptions to my preparation. But no, day of the competition, I felt great. It's a 2-day competition. I felt probably as healthy as I'd been all season long, and my intensity certainly was there. My goal at those Olympic trials was to try to break the world record because I was in that good a shape. My preparation had been going really well up until that point.
And there you are. And I would assume the Reebok executives are there, right? I mean, here's the culmination of it. And they probably had a huge campaign ready to roll because then you got a couple more months before, the NBC Olympics in 92 in Barcelona.
Yeah, and I would also think that some of the other athletes that are famous, that are already famous for what they have, could you feel jealousy? Could you feel like, oh, these guys have got? Let's face it, I imagine you were single at the time and all that. And you must be swarmed with autographs and people throwing themselves at you. I am I correct that there was some jealousy between other athletes?
Absolutely, and it was a new experience for any track and field athlete. We were getting to experience what it was like to be Tom Brady for a year or Michael Jordan. They took Dave and I to Laker games and we sat courtside until, and we were there till late hours in the morning. And it's funny, I talk to kids now and I say, man, we were so famous. We went on the Arsenio Hall show. And everybody looks at us like, who? And so it was a lot of fun. But yes, yeah, Jackie Jonah Kersey, Carl Lewis, those guys just were amazed at the attention that two decathletes who normally don't get that much attention were really getting. It was good for the sport. It was fantastic for the event. And I say the event of the decathlon because we had more participants at those Olympic trials than we'd ever had before.
Yeah, I got to ask you, in all your time, did you ever meet Bruce Jenner, or was Bruce Caitlyn at the time? Who did you, or did you meet both of them? No, I do. I don't know.
So interesting question. So in the 1990s, early 1990s, Visa, the Visa brand credit card company and banking company, they sponsored the decathlon. Okay. And what had happened is we talked about, you said, hey, two Olympic gold medals. No, we got a lot of Olympic gold medalists in the decathlon in the United States. And the history goes clear back to Jim Thorpe in 1912. And that's the reason we have the title of the world's greatest athlete, because Jim Thorpe was called the world's greatest athlete. But you go through history, 1926, 1932, and then you go 48 and 52, Bob Mathias, 1956, Milt Campbell, an American, Rayford Johnson, 1960, Bill Toomey, 1968, and then Bruce Jenner, 1976. And so the goal behind the Visa program was to reclaim the Olympic gold medal in the decathlon and be called the world's greatest athlete. So Visa brought emerging athletes together with legends. And so I got a chance to meet in person Bob Mathias, Milt Campbell, Rayford Johnson, Bill Toomey, and of course Bruce Jenner. And it was really fun hanging out with Bruce, getting to know him in the 90s. And he was a mentor for me. He really was, until I started breaking his records. And then I could see there was a little bit of competition, and
He turned on you a little bit?
well, I don't know. I think he's just a competitive guy. And so, Bruce and I have known each other for a long time. But when I started breaking his records, it was like he kind of wasn't in my corner as much as he was. I think he felt that if another American won the gold, he wouldn't have been the last guy to win the gold, and he was. It had been 20 years, from 76 to 96. But that's how competitive he is. But he's the kind of guy who would get in the middle of the photo, kind of, hey, I'm teaching the kid everything he knows type of an attitude.
It's a good thing he didn't do
Yeah.
anything drastic after that. Like that didn't
No.
make him make a
which-
big change in his life.
Which makes me ask: do you all stay in contact still today?
Just by phone. So what's interesting, the last time I really hung out and was with Bruce Jenner was in 2012. Okay. And he brought his whole entire family to the Olympic trials in Eugene, Oregon. And we got a chance to spend some time together as Olympic champions. And then since he's transitioned, though, I haven't met Caitlyn. All right. I haven't been around Caitlyn at all, but I did get a chance to spend time with Bruce's mother a couple years ago before she passed away. And Bruce calls me a couple times a year and just says, hey, thanks for spending time with my mom. She passed shortly after, but but people, there are other decathletes. Brian Clay, who says, he used to live in LA. He says he spent a lot of time with Caitlyn Jenner. He said there's nothing more striking than seeing Caitlyn Jenner / Bruce Jenner step up to the first tee and smack one 300 yards down the middle on a golf shot.
Oh yeah.
Women's tees or men's tees?
Probably the black tees in the back.
Brace yourself, Dan, when you meet her, because you're not ready to see her in a $12,000 ball gown. And that's where I met her for the first time too. And it was so funny because, Jenner. Caitlyn kept doing that. She was just mesmerized by the fact that our names were so close.
Golf when it was Bruce, Wounded Warrior during the 90s or after the 90s and the years 2000, all those events that was part of that.
And then of course Cato was involved in the family later. I mean,
I actually sprained my ankle at one of the things. I fell off a ball washer. So no, I'm serious,
Dan, be ready. These zingers
ready.
come quick. No, but you played volleyball in the backyard with the Kardashians.
Yeah,
Was
I did
Bruce
that.
there? At the
It was
time?
a barbecue.
Yeah.
It's at their house.
Crazy. Okay, Dan. So it's not too much of a leap to think you're going to make the team. You had just won the World Championships the year before, where you compete against the world. Okay. And now
Yes.
you're just competing against Americans just to meet the team, college kids probably. I mean, so, you're crushing it. Things are going great. But, one mishap and all hell breaks loose. So let's get to the pole vault because that's where it did
Sure.
happen. And set the scene. Was it the last day? Was it one of the last events? And this basically your victory lap? Get the pole vault done and let's get my uniform measured for Barcelona.
So you're absolutely right, Tom. It was the second day, the eighth event. So it's the third event of the second day. You get through the pole vault, you got the javelin and the 1500, and you wrap things up. But I was on world record pace going into day two. Ran a good hurdle race, decent discus, which kind of pulled me back off a world record pace. But we got to the pole vault, and I'll tell you what, the pole vault is the high jump and the pole vault for the decathlon take a long time. And there's 40 some guys in the competition, so they use two runways. And they split them up 24 and 24, however many people we have, they split them up evenly. But the pole vault bar starts really low and then it inches its way up, 5 centimeters, 5 centimeters, 5 centimeters, and 5 centimeters is 2 3/4 inches, and it just takes a long time for it to go up. And so, man, I was probably out there since my last warm up to the start of the competition, probably 90 minutes. All right, just waiting for my turn to go. And the pole vault had been an event that I had improved in greatly from 1990 to 1991. Like I was a 13-foot vaulter, and then in 1991 I was a 17-foot vaulter, and so it was an event that I needed to get better in. I got a lot better in it, and I thought I had it on lockdown. And we picked the opening height. My coaches and I said, "Look, this is what we jump at every day. This is what you jump at every competition. This is the bar we're coming in at." And so the amount of time that it took for that bar to get up to where I was enormous, and that was a big learning experience for me to be out in that heat, understand the amount of time it takes. So I get to the pole vault and tragedy. And here's the thing, Tom. I've got a couple projects coming up. Maybe we're going to see a movie about Dan and Dave. We want people to watch that, and so there's a little bit of drama. So I don't want to go into every jump, every attempt, but ultimately I score 0 points in the pole vault, and I don't make I get third attempt miss, and I'm in shock, absolute shock. But people ask me about Reebok. Were you concerned about Reebok? No, at that point, I didn't care about Reebok. I cared about Dan O'Brien making the Olympic team. I was in absolute shock that I was not going to be on this Olympic team because all I did since I was a junior high kid was dream about going to the Olympics.
You didn't have to win that event, right? Could you have picked a safe height, cleared it, and gone on to Barcelona? Or is that now how it works? Because I'm sure for the days and months after, you're just playing it all back in your head and what you would have done differently and things like that. So how does it work? Did you have to clear a certain height in order to stay alive?
No, I had to clear a height just to get any points. All right. That height could have been low. I could have maybe even made the height that I high jumped and made the team, but that's not how we that's not how we pole vault. We just like, oh, I'm gonna put that thing up to 15.8. I've never missed at 15.8 in practice or a meet. There was really I didn't know how to play it safe that early in my career. All right. But what happens is by no hiding in the pole vault though, you get 0 points for that event, and you have to score an all 10 to have a chance. And no, I don't need to win that event. All I needed to do was make that opening bar, and I didn't need to make another bar after that. I would have jumped at other bars to try to score higher, but it was just one of those things. It's like everybody no heights in the high jump or the pole vault during their career. That one just happened to be at the exact wrong time for me in my career.
So obviously, when that happens, you got this campaign going on. You're devastated. You're devastated. I mean, you're probably searching your soul, like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be in the Olympics. I'm this great athlete. So in hindsight, now you do motivational speaking. Is that part of the whole speech of how you can overcome anything? Because that would just at your age of doing the Olympics back then, it's hard to overcome something like that because your ego does get involved no matter what. So is that part now with the maturity that you have when you go speak, say to hey kids or whatever, you can overcome anything?
Absolutely, yes. And so when I and you hit the nail on the head. When I do motivational speaking, I talk about I didn't know it at the time, but I was ready for adversity like that. I had a great group of people around me, support staff. I was a young athlete. I knew what it was I was trying to accomplish. I knew what my goals were exactly. And so I was able to fall back on all these different things. Although it hurt, it really sucked. I mean, for 2 weeks, I didn't probably leave my apartment except to go get some beers or something, but it was that devastating, but I was able to overcome it. And luckily, I think people ask me, it's like, how hard was it? I was a young athlete. Okay. And I say young, I was young in the decathlon and the fact I hadn't done it that long. And there was nothing else for me to do except move on and move past it. The question was, how was I going to be able to do that with kind of that third attempt hanging over my head? And a lot of people tried to play that against me in the years to come. And I was able to work with a sports psychologist and get over it.
Yeah. That's why I think it's so cool that both of you are having this conversation, because one day you're doing something, the next day you're world famous. Right. And then there's adversity that goes along with that. Dan, did you learn a few things about human nature, about the business world, about the media world? It's a tough business. And these people that are behind you and you're their hero and this investment's made in you. And now there's in the stands, it's got to be an awkward conversation. I mean, you're devastated. All you care about was making the team. I mean, that's what you were there for. But then you're thinking, holy crap, these guys in suits. Right? Did anybody turn on you? Did they make your life a little bit more difficult, or were they supportive?
Reebok was very supportive because they needed the campaign to work. And so they came up with an idea on how to do that. And that was me being in support of Dave, because Dave was going to the Olympics. And so we shot more commercials. And it felt like a nice consolation prize for me. I think, maybe the best advice I got from anybody was my coaches. I know height in the pole vault. I'm devastated. I'm on the practice track, and my coaches are like, "Hey, let's get ready for the javelin in the 1500." I was like, "You're crazy. I'm not going to go out there and do the last two events. It won't matter. I'm not on the Olympic team. I'm going to just sit and watch the rest of this meet." And they said, "No, no, no, man. We got to go out. We got to show good sportsmanship. I want you to finish the last two events." And my coach, Rick Sloan, he was a 1968 Olympian in Mexico City. He said, "Look, people are going to remember you for what you do from here." And so I went out there and I did throw the javelin and I ran the 1500 meters and I did all the press. And I could have just, stayed at my hotel but no, I did the interview after. I did the Today Show a couple mornings later. I was tired because I was in New Orleans and I was staying up all night. But that was some consolation to be able to do all that stuff. And because of that, though, I think I had the public behind me as I tried to go to the next Olympics. I had the public behind me going to my next World Championship. So I got a lot of support because I really did show good sportsmanship and learn those valuable lessons.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I relate everything to Rocky and all the Rocky films because it's always, how they write a script of, overcome something. So it proves that you overcome adversity by going to the 96.
But I'm blown
Olympics.
away by your reaction, Dan, because Cato, you can tell how you're wired and how, and maybe there's a correlation here, right? Because you were doing the right thing, testifying in this trial, trying to serve.
I got a gold medal, by the way, for being a witness. Did you know that?
Dan and Cato, I would have hid. I could not have done it. My emotional capacity at that age, young 20s, I know what I did if I had a bad game. I would hide. I would lock myself up and let nobody see me. I couldn't deal with it on a smaller scale. And the fact that you did, I mean, that's great advice by your coach. And that may have flipped your whole life at that point. Because if you had taken the easy way out and not done the events, how would you have handled that?
Well, I think it's obviously Dan's a incredible athlete, the greatest athlete. So mine is different. I saw the media because at that time there was the TMZs. Mine was different because they want to put you on a pedestal and they want you to the top and then they pull it and they want to see you fall. And they just do. They just it's just kind of human nature of the media wants to kind of paint a great picture of you and then a terrible picture of you. So I always said that, and I always relate everything back to my family because nothing but support. Raised with 7 in our family, which you were also, and I always had my family support me, so I wasn't worried about that. I kind of knew who I was, and you were adopted at age 2, and interracial family, so. I imagine you had nothing but support from your family also.
Well, what was interesting is my family didn't understand sports that well. Okay. I was the only guy in my family that really played, really got into sports and played high level sports. And so when I failed, it felt like I was taking care of family members. My dad, it was like somebody in the family had died. I didn't make that Olympic team. But for me, they were there for me, which was great. But it was my community. I mean, honestly, it was Moscow, Idaho, and I remember I didn't leave I had bad dreams. I mean, I dreamed that I got the call. Hey, man, they need the alternate, And I was going to the Olympics, and then I'd wake up and just go, oh no, I'm not going. But no, I got calls from Bruce Jenner and Jackie Joyner Kersee, but I'll never forget. A friend of mine said, "Look, I'm playing in a golf tournament at the Elks Club. Would you come watch?" And I was like, "Oh man, no." And so, but I ended up going. And there was this little old Italian lady who came up to me and said, "Dan O'Brien, can I give you a hug?" And I was just like, "Wow, okay." And she was so short, I had to get down on one knee. And she gave me a hug and she said, "We still love you, Dan O'Brien." And it was a magical moment. It showed up in the daily newspaper. So this lady, I don't remember her name, she said, Moscow still supports Dan O'Brien. And if not for people like that, if not for a community like that, it would have been tough. And I don't know if I could have done this had I lived in Atlanta or Chicago or LA, because when I was down, I got a lot of people around me that were picking me up. I mean, and if people would have just kept hitting me when I was down, who knows what would have happened?
Well, it's an incredible fork in the road, and there's redemption that comes from that. We're going to get to that in a second. In 1996 at the Olympics in America, in Atlanta. But Dan, could you pull yourself to watch any of the 92 games in Barcelona? That was the dream team. A lot of things happened, right? It was a monumental Olympic Games. Could you watch it, or did you ignore it?
No, I got a chance to go and announce. Okay, so my consolation prize again was NBC called and said, "Hey, look, we want you in the booth while Dave's competing. Come to Barcelona." And so, man, I went to Barcelona and had a ball. I went and saw other events. I partied. I was dating a girl who was a high jumper for the United States. Um, and you'll never guess who my broadcast partners were: Tom Hammond and O.J. Simpson.
Tom Hammond's a great track announcer. He is. I mean, his ability to call the 100 meters, like
Yes.
when the great ones were doing it, but OJ
I
on the
had
call.
no
Hey,
idea.
OJ was so. I mean, we can all speak to it. He was a great guy.
Yeah, he was a track and field guy. Ran at USC, broke world records in the 4x1. Yeah.
Did you party with him in Barcelona? Did you get out? Because that guy liked a good time.
No, I didn't get a chance, but I saw him every day in the lunchroom. And the one thing I'll never forget about OJ was I'm dating this 6 foot tall high jumper, and she's gorgeous. She's on the Olympic team. Well,
Is she blonde?
no, she was not blonde. Um, she's from Virginia. She's black. She was great looking. But OJ had his own girlfriend with him, but he wouldn't stop hitting on my girlfriend. And I just thought, dude, you're
Isn't that something that's the
so
MO? I mean, without a doubt, you saw it firsthand. So
Wow.
crazy.
What a
Okay,
small world. I have no idea you did it in the booth. It's amazing.
no doubt. Okay, so
6
then
degrees of separation with
It-
Dan O'Brien.
Yep. And then so you got 4 years. Obviously, there's no doubt you're gonna do it again. When is a decathlete in their prime? What like
wow, no doubt, no doubt I was going to do it again. No, there's a lot of doubt, and there's a long time in between
I meant try.
competitions.
I
Sure.
meant try. I mean,
Oh,
get back
sure,
on the
sure.
horse and train. To get ready to
Yeah.
try to make the 96 team. I would assume that was never a doubt, or where was your thought process then?
Oh no, there was never a doubt. Okay, I think the one thing that is a little bit different about athletes today and athletes in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, our goal in the 80s and in the 90s was to go to the Olympics and win a gold medal. Okay, that was my goal. But nobody said, "Hey, go to 3 Olympics, go to 4 Olympics." Like Michael Phelps or Simone Biles, and so my goal still was to go to the Olympics and win a gold medal. I wanted to be the next American great decathlete and follow in the footsteps of those gentlemen that I told you about. And history just, history was what I was dreaming about. And so no, there was no doubt. But I think what happened in '92 was um, it made me a bulletproof athlete. I had been the lowest you could possibly be as an athlete by missing those Olympic Games, especially when you're the best in the world. I was the American record holder. I was the best in the world. I don't make that team. But from '92 to '96, I was absolutely unbeatable. And I don't know if I would have been that good had I not failed in '92. So it was a great learning experience for me.
I remember the 96 games. I was working for NBC in Chicago. So we were all over it. That was monumental too because of the Centennial bombing. So
Yeah.
what's the life for a decathlete, U.S. Olympic track and field competitor in the Olympics? You got a lot of downtime. Track is an event that lasts over a week, but the decathlon is 2 days. So where were you during the bombing? What was some of the highlights of being in Atlanta for that? Because it had to be so much different and special. It was on home soil, baby. It was in America, in a major city.
Right.
you know, and it was a good time. The mid to late 90s was a good time in this country. So just take us back there, Dan. You must have been on a
Sure.
mission to get that gold.
Well, I got through the trials, without any interruptions, without any drama. But I decided that because the Olympics were in the United States, I was going to enjoy every aspect of it. Sometimes when you go to other countries, it's like, we don't want you standing on your feet for 5 or 6 hours at the opening ceremony, so maybe you won't go to that. But man, I said no, I'm going to experience everything I possibly can. And so my magical Olympics started at those opening ceremonies. And so Michael Johnson, who, probably was one of the other big track and field names. What happens is we were in Fulton County Stadium where the Braves play, and it's right next to Centennial Olympic Stadium. And so all the athletes staged on the opening ceremonies in Fulton County. And it takes hours to get through this. They serve you lunch and they show videos on the big screen. And then the teams start walking in for the opening ceremonies. And the U.S. as a home country is last. Michael Johnson and I, we were so inundated with people wanting pictures and autographs and everything from other countries and our own countries. A guy came and said, "Hey, let me give you guys a break. Let me step you guys out of the main fray here of all these athletes." And he puts us in an elevator and he takes us upstairs to the owner's suite, and the dream team's up there, just hanging, chilling. There you see Shaq and Penny Hardaway. And he was just like, "You guys can hang out up here until they walk the athletes out." And so I connected with some of the older guys, Karl Malone, John Stockton, David Robinson. And I can remember at that, when we were up there, we looked at our emails for the very first time. Email just had started at that time. And so we all had Olympic emails, and it was like people sent you hundreds and hundreds of just well wishes. And so I entered the Olympic Stadium in the opening ceremonies with the U.S. Dream Team, both men and women's, and it was great. But I went to other events. I was there the night the U.S. won USA won gymnastics with Carrie Strug and that whole crew, Shannon Miller. I went to swimming, saw Amy Van Dyke, and I couldn't wait for it to be my turn. And when it was my turn, it was so stressful, I couldn't wait for it to be over. And then when it was over, you think, oh man, I can't wait to do that again. So the Olympics were great, but I was in Centennial Park hours before that bomb went off. I was doing just a personal appearance for Jim McIngvale. And I don't know if you guys know Jim McIngvale out of Houston. Mattress Mac, he's known as.
Oh my God, no, Dan, I've done business with him.
Okay.
Mattress Mac, are you kidding?
He's in the hospital right now as we speak.
Oh, is he? You know, the biggest
he's-
sports gambler too. But the guy's the most ruthless negotiator. Side story: when the Astros won the World Series, I did a book on them because I used to do championship books, and this one was awesome. It was hardcover, even though I wanted the Dodgers to win. It was the year the Astros were stealing the signals. So I had probably about 4,000 books left, and I go to Mattress Mac. I just go right to a store, meet up with him. I said, "Hey, why don't you put these in all your stores?" He's got about 12 stores. He's huge.
Yeah.
He opened up his doors when the hurricane hit and let people stay there for free.
Trying to get him on the show.
Boy, did he take me, though. I think he bought them for $2.50 each. But at least I had him in all the stores, and I was able to get rid of them and not have to store. But I know Mattress Mac very well. Yeah.
Wow.
So what were you
But he
doing
had
there
a-
with him?
Well, he had a campaign. He was trying to bring the Olympics to Texas in 2008. And so he was working with the state of Texas. They were going to do the Olympics between Houston and Dallas and Austin and really make it a statewide affair. But Chamber of Commerce was set up there, and I signed autographs for 2 or 3 hours. But he, because of that, he gave me a hotel room. So I didn't stay in the Athlete Village. I stayed in a hotel room because I was 30 years old at this time. And I didn't want to sleep in bunk beds in a dorm room situation. So I stayed at a hotel that was just near the stadium, and it worked out a little better for me. But I was there in Centennial Park doing that. I go to bed that night. I wake up the next morning, and there's the news that says, a bombing in Centennial Park. I was there at 9 p.m. The bombing took place around 11 p.m. And my first thought was, oh man, they're trying to take it away from me. I'm not going to get my chance to win this gold medal. But they started the competition later that day, and it went off without a hitch.
Right.
So-
that was amazing.
That was a
story
great
with
movie, too, by the way.
Yeah.
I think, didn't Eastwood make that?
Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, it was such a great movie.
Rich-
Okay,
Richard
so Kato, you've heard the stories, right, about what goes on in the Olympic Village. We have to ask an Olympic athlete.
Well, Hope Solo, not related to Hans, who I know you're a big fan of Han Solo, but she wrote that book and said the Olympic Village is basically sex everywhere.
A Diddy party. Maybe not.
It's
Yeah, no, but that's the thing. You got young, attractive people, a lot of testosterone,
Athletes, yeah,
lot
I
of
was
stuff
gonna
flowing.
say.
You know, maybe some quick friendships. Was it like that? I know you didn't live there in '96, but I mean that's the urban legend. Is it true?
And that's what I hear from, athletes who did stay there. A good friend of mine, he was a three-time Olympic. He was a three-time Olympian in the shot put. He was like the easiest hookup you could ever imagine. But you got to think about, the age of these athletes, all that testosterone, hormones running around, and what you forget about the Olympic Village is only a small handful of those athletes make the finals. Okay, and so you're one and done. You're one race, and you might be out or make it to a semifinal and don't go any farther. And so there's just a lot of people that when they get done competing, they're having a party. But that's what I certainly hear. And but I've been at World Championships where, you go into the Olympic Village and it's just it's like Halloween. There's just condoms. You just reach in, grab a handful, throw them in your backpack, and they're handing them out, and they give them out in record numbers.
At least they don't deny it. It happened, so might as well try to make
Yeah.
it as safe as possible, right?
That's when you can wear the fake gold medals and go, oh, I'm gonna find out
that's
who
right.
that guy is.
Hey, I had a good night last night. Picked up a
Yeah,
couple
hey,
golds.
yeah.
Want to meet me over there?
Wait a minute, this isn't gold, this is chocolate.
Yeah. My lasting memories of '96, obviously what you did, Dan, and then that was Michael Johnson. Yeah, what he set a world record in the 200 and the 400. It was just magical, because the Olympics sometimes are hard because it's you're watching them in the morning, right? And they're live in Paris or something else. But this is prime time in the U.S. and the lights are on and it's just magic. So, what was it like? When did you know that you crossed that proverbial hurdle and that this was going to happen? Did you know after day one? Was there one event where you thought, I got this? I'm home?
It was probably the pole vault. Actually, it was in doubt because there was a young German guy who was just going crazy. Out of the 10 events, he had 6 personal bests, and every time I turned around, this kid Frank Boosman, he was going out of his head. I think he scored 400 or 500 points, personal best overall. And I thought, man, this kid's trying to steal it from me. And I was really good at that time in my career and super super consistent. So I let my averages kind of win out over everything. But it was the second day. I pole vaulted much better than he did. But then in the javelin, he had a big time personal best, so I had to step up and throw a personal best just so I had a cushion in the 1500 meters. But you're right, Tom, that magical moment, Michael Johnson wearing the gold shoes, winning the 200 meters and breaking the world record. I was throwing the javelin at that time and I was on the field. And what's amazing is the gun goes off and all the flashes, boom, 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 boom. I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. And I was the first guy to greet Michael when he crossed the finish line. And he was in such a daze. I don't even think he remembers it. You got to go back and look at the video. But, to be on the field, be an American, and what was cool being an American, at those Olympics, my greatest gift, yes, I got to win the gold medal, but to see after the competition to get the medal and share that with 100,000 people in a U.S. stadium in Atlanta was just, I mean, that's just something I'll never ever forget.
Man, you may have to come out of retirement for LA 28. Get
Well,
that feeling again. First time
You'll be out here.
back in the States.
I have a question, Dan, for that. When you're back in '96, and you obviously went and probably watched, even in Barcelona, watched some of the women competing. And did you ever think from Eastern Bloc countries, maybe Russia or something, that you saw a woman compete and you're going, that's a dude. That's not, I saw the nut hit the scrotum, hit the freaking hurdle. That's it. And that was back then because people were saying a lot of them were juicing up with the steroids. So now we come to 2024. What's your position on men competing in women's sports? And do you think it's ridiculous that a man is competing? I say this because I just saw the Congress put the NCAA, I think it was the president up there, and how he's just saying there's like 10 of them, but they're allowed to go in the showers. They're allowed to use the restrooms. And I just think it's a complete joke. What's your position on that, if you can get political?
Sure. Well, thank God the International Olympic Committee and the U.S. Olympic Paralympic Committee at that level, the rules are a lot more stringent. Okay, for formerly biological males now trying to compete as female athletes. That doesn't happen in world athletics. There's a biological passport. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you have to do if you want to compete. If you have high levels of testosterone, not the fact that you might have formerly been a man. It's just high levels of testosterone. You have to do certain things to even compete as a woman in world athletics. And so I'm thankful for that. But I'm all in favor of, men should compete with men, women should compete with women, and those sexes are given to us at birth, and there's just such an advantage from a physical standpoint. If you get through puberty as a male athlete, you have just such physical advantages. So I try not to be too political because I announce NCAA track and field, but gratefully, thankfully, we haven't had that issue at the collegiate level in the sport of track and field, anyways.
And it shouldn't even be political. Actually, it's not even a political topic.
It's a
if you think
common
about it.
sense
It's just
thing.
yeah.
It's embarrassing we're even talking about it or even asking. Like, how could it even be possible that it could happen?
Right, the boxer was from what country was the dude that knocked the woman and she started bawling and
It's just
it was
crazy.
just
It's just crazy. So you win the gold for the second time in your life. Everything changes again instantly overnight. You want to capitalize on it. How do you monetize that? Do you have to have a real strategy? Did you have a team? Did you have your agents and managers think, okay, let's get to work now because there's money to be made?
Well, and it sets up beforehand. Okay, you have to have all that stuff in place beforehand. And so when I won the gold, I did get to go in the Wheaties box. What's interesting though is, and a lot different. Bruce Jenner wins the gold in '76, and then he signs over the next 3 or 4 years, he signs $10 million in endorsement deals. Okay. But you think about '76, who were the big names to come out of '76? Bruce Jenner, Nadia Comaneci, maybe Edwin Moses. I can't name, maybe a couple of swimmers, but just not a whole lot. But in the 1996 Olympics, they put 7 different people on the front of the Wheaties box. So there just wasn't one star. And so I think as we go along, especially, year after year, there's a lot more coverage and a lot more stars. You gotta split that money up, that endorsement money afterwards, and spread it around. Today athletes who can market themselves online and social media, it's so much different than what we could. I just sat back and waited for people to call, and they did or they didn't. But the value to Olympic sponsors is: are you going to compete again? And I didn't know if I was going to compete again. I was 30 years old when I won the gold, and a lot of people weren't signing me up for long-term deals to take it into 2000. And I didn't make it perfectly clear, yes, I'm going to go for another Olympics. I just waited for opportunities. I took 1997 off. Then I came back and won a Goodwill Games gold medal in 1998. And so, I think I probably didn't capitalize on it as much. I should have transitioned into something else at that time, but I wanted to keep competing, and I because of that, I think I lost some opportunities in the broadcast booth or other areas.
Dan, please don't transition.
Trigger word for
Dan,
Cato.
please.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Dan, you have the ultimate story for motivational speaking. Cato mentioned it.
Yeah.
You got the ups, the downs, the heartbreak, the ultimate glory. I mean, that always transfers to an audience, always. And I ride that as long as you can, because the story will never get old. It'll never be great, and no one's taking that medal from you. You won it. You're the greatest athlete in the world. Period. So that's something you can always hang on for sure.
The only time it really affects me is if I'm sitting and watching ESPN on a Sunday afternoon, and coming up next, the 5 biggest sports failures of all time. Let's go to New Orleans, 1992. There's Dan O'Brien, number 3. And it's like, oh, that's right. I'm still on that list.
It
Yeah.
wasn't like a small stage,
but that
right?
list that list is a motivation for you to actually show that in one of your speeches, to go, and here I am talking to you today. Like I said, I think adversity is sometimes just the best thing that can happen to anybody. Yeah. Have adversity and overcome anything, and you become, a Dan O'Brien, a legend.
You know what? Every year in review, like if you did a decade review of the 90s, you two are front and center. You're in it. You're in the list.
Dan, I did this campaign for Trivial Pursuit, and it was us coming out of a time capsule, and I was with Carrie Strug, who carried Boris carried the
Yeah.
so
Bella Caroli.
I did it with Bella. Bella was in the commercial with me, and that we're all coming out of this, and he just walks off, carrying her, and I was. It gives me goosebumps because that was one of the best campaigns ever, and I was working with the legend. So that was obviously Carrie. That was '96. It had to be, right.
It was. Yeah, you're right.
Right?
So it's
she had the
another
high squeaky
connection.
voice, remember?
Yeah. No, she was in the commercial with us, and
Yeah.
it was just
That's very cool. Trivia question, Cato.
Yeah.
What brand of shoes did Dan O'Brien win the gold medal in 1996?
Oh my goodness! If it's got to be Reebok.
Dan, would you like to answer that question?
It was not. I switched. I switched from Reebok to Nike in 1994, and that was the shoe that did it for me. It made more sense for me to be with Nike, and because they were an Oregon-based company. I grew up in Oregon, and they made great sprint shoes, and Reebok was fun because we were creating shoes at that time, and I got some input on my own shoes. But I couldn't beat the sprint shoes and the jump shoe that Nike put together for me.
Yeah, they have more money too.
Yeah.
But better
They
endorsement,
did. They did have a lot more money.
better technology. I mean, they're the best. They're known for it. Did you and Dave remain friends? You kind of have this weird connection. You're almost like brothers in some way. Did the relationship last?
Absolutely. Dave and I would be close. We were close before, but then we were really close and got to share a lot of stuff. And afterwards, he was a big supporter of mine. When I went for the '96 Olympics, he was there the night that I won. It was hilarious because he's there just sitting in the crowd, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's Dave, there's my boy." But Dave and I, we see each other a couple times a year. We play in some golf tournaments together. He ended up moving back to Oregon, where he was originally from. So, but no, he and I got together. I think it was 2016, 17 for the 30 for 30 podcast. The 30 for 30, yeah, the trials of Dan and Dave. And so it was fun. And honestly, it was like we never missed a beat. We were just like back in our old shtick and routine and doing Dan and Dave.
So in the beginning of our show, Tom, when Dan even says the word, I went to school in Moscow, Idaho. I mean, immediately, you know what you think. And I think the exact same thing. I mean, how bizarre that you went to the same university of you probably of the four people that were murdered we're going to find out.
Yeah, and it's a
Allegedly
2-year anniversary basically about now. And the trial hasn't even started. But Dan, you went there. You went to school in Moscow. Where did you live? Do you know the house?
Yeah, do you know the house?
Yeah, I do remember that house. What was interesting is I lived in the dorms for the first couple of years, and then I told you I got bad grades, had to go to Spokane, which was 80 miles away. But then I came back to University of Idaho, and I lived on two times. I lived in that neighborhood. I lived on Taylor Avenue, which is a main road that kind of comes behind Fraternity Road, Big Field, and it connects to King Road, where that road was. And then another time I lived in apartments behind King Road, which was Queen Road, the Queen Road apartments. And so as soon as the news came out, I mean, it was a weird feeling. It was so kind of such an odd deja vu feeling of just going by that house, on my bike, on a jog, coming home from workouts, things of that nature. It's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe something that gruesome happened in a little town like Moscow.
It's an interesting town, isn't it? I really followed this through Vanity Fair, or one of the writers that was working for Airmail that we had on the show. And there's some dynamics in that town that make it interesting, right? It's not a major city. The 911 system isn't sophisticated, right? Because it's
Yep.
a little bit remote. Have you been there since? Is there just kind of a creepy, eerie vibe that's in the ozone? Because this is just so horrific, so tragic, so terrible. And do they have the right guy? My opinion, I think they do. Is he going to get convicted? That's another story. But you must have friends still in the area, and just from living there. What's your thoughts?
So one of the guys I had on my team, he was my attorney at the time. His name's Ron Landeck. He's the local attorney, and so when this happened, I got a chance to jump on the phone with him, and he didn't go into great detail because he's, seeing some behind the scenes things. But I was there last year. A bunch of athletes from the track team, we celebrated, did kind of a reunion for the track coach who's getting a little bit older, but he recruited a lot of Jamaican guys, a lot of Africans and stuff. So we came back into town. People can't stop talking about it. It's eerie. What's eerie about Moscow, Idaho, is it hasn't changed that much in the last 25 years. All right, they haven't. The university hasn't grown. A lot of schools, Boise State and some other big state schools. I mean, they're hungry to get more people into that school, but Idaho's still about the same size it was when I went there, and there hasn't been a lot of growth in population in that area. So when COVID hit, it wasn't like the Moscow, Idaho was not real welcoming to people to come in and move and raise the price of real estate and things like that. So it hasn't changed much. And I think that's what's eerie about it for me. As you drive down that street, those houses look the same. Those fraternities and sororities, all, which are within walking distance, they all look exactly the same as they did when I went to college there.
Right. When you hear the story, like I said, you kind of put yourself right back in that spot in being in college. When you see that, you go, I know that place. I know that street. And you mentioned that your grades were bad. You went to Spokane, drove back. Isn't that where he drove from? Supposedly, Kohlberger went from.
No, it wasn't.
Spokane to
I think it was where Washington State is,
Oh, Pullman. Okay.
right?
Pullman.
Because that's where
How-
he was
which is
going to
closer?
graduate school.
How close is
8
Pullman to?
miles.
Yeah, Pullman's super.
They're 8 miles
then-
apart. Yeah.
Yeah, then it's okay.
Yeah, and then we're going to be all over this in 2025 because the trial's supposed to start
Yeah.
in June.
Yeah, and Dan, so obviously your connection of winning a gold medal, and everybody knows you, obviously, in Idaho. Do you know, like, the police force? Do you know, like, the inside? If you really wanted to go and play detective, you could make calls, correct? And find out, confidentially, because I imagine everybody knows you.
Everybody does know me, but it's so strange to go back there 25 years later. I mean, everybody that I know is now retired, and there's still a lot of locals there that I am good friends with, and can say hi to them. I'll never forget though. I probably because of my troubled college days, I probably was in front of 3 or 4 different judges. And those judges would be my connects, but they've all retired. That's how old they were even back then.
We'll
But,
take any connections you have, Dan,
yeah.
to get some insight on this
Yeah, sure.
trial.
Tom has only been in front of a Hawaiian Tropic judge.
I didn't do
Well,
well.
you used to
either.
actually been a judge, right?
Yeah, that's my courtroom experience, luckily. Hey, what's your thoughts as an Olympian and still heavily involved in track and field? Are we going to be able to pull this off in 28, Los Angeles? We're talking 3.5 years now. The clock's ticking. What's your thoughts? It's the next time that the Summer Olympics are going to be here in America. I'm excited. I can't wait,
it's
to
gonna
be honest with you.
It's going to be amazing.
We got beautiful venues. It's an awesome city to do it in. But what's your thoughts? And obviously you'll be here.
I think the Olympics in LA in 1984 did a lot for the Olympic movement here in the United States, and I'm excited because it's going to inspire a lot of young kids, okay, to want to be an Olympian, want to represent the country. But what's been happening over the last couple of Olympics is one city's been trying to outdo the next. And I was in London 2012, and I thought, hey, the Olympics can't get any better. Tokyo pulled off a great Olympics, although nobody could go. And then here we are, Paris. The Paris Olympics were beautiful. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm not sure we can outdo Paris, but LA's certainly going to try. It's got its challenges though. What's fun about the Olympics, the summer games, is you get to see multiple things. Hey, I'm going to go see this in the morning. I'm going to go see this in the afternoon or the evening. Are we going to be able to do that? Can you get across town to see multiple events in a single day? Can they get those Olympic lanes going? Gosh, what are we going to do with all those homeless people on that one long street that, it's just things of that nature. And I certainly hope they do. Can they even get the Uber pickup area fixed at the LAX airport, right?
Oh,
That's one of
these
your
are great
pet
questions.
peeves. That's true though. You come to LAX, you got to take a shuttle bus.
Oh, it's the absolute worst. So Dan, of all the Olympics that you've been to, you've announced at or been part of and competed in, what do you think of America's patriotism? Do you think it's kind of been depleted? Did you see from 92 to 96 to being in Paris with the Americans? Did you see it go? Is it declining? And what's your feeling of seeing it? Because you've been around the crowds of patriotism.
No, I think it's fantastic. The Olympic movement is catching. All right, U.S. Olympic Paralympic Committee, and we call them the U.S. OPC now. They do a wonderful job of presenting the games. I think more than ever, young athletes want to be Olympians, and that's what got me off the couch. I was a junior high kid. I saw the 1980 Olympic hockey team win the gold, and I said at that moment, I want to wear the USA uniform, and so I think patriotism is there. What's interesting, though, is when you look at the Olympic Games, swimming, track and field, and some of the other events, the U.S. is training all these foreign athletes. You look at the French guy, he's trained by Michael Phelps's former coach, and the French swimmer, and all these track and field athletes. The woman that won the 100 meters, she trains at the University of Texas, but she competes for another country. It's like at some point, we're going to have to stop training all these other athletes from other countries. And there's some opportunities, because you go to college here from another country, but man, there's just the majority of the track and field athletes are living and training here in the U.S.
Right. I think 2028, like I said, I think it's going to be ultimate.
It's going to be because
Yeah.
things have already changed.
Yeah.
The mood in the country, patriotism
Yeah.
is back, and now we'll be doing it right in LA and Hollywood. It has a chance.
gonna be
And luckily,
crazy
Gavin Newsom won't be governor then. He's got 2 more years. So thank God, unless someone's worse than him. But I mean, take this stuff serious, man. We're on the world stage. for 2 weeks. Everybody's going to be watching, and we need to put our best foot forward. So I hope we're ready to do it.
And you'll be here, right, Dan?
I will be involved in one way or another, and I'm anxious. I haven't seen SoFi Stadium yet, so track and field's going to be back in the Coliseum, which is going to be awesome. It'll be fun.
All right, so you kind of teased it, Dan versus Dave movie. I mean, the concept is brilliant. It would be an awesome movie. Anything you can promote or tell us about that, or just any other way our fans can support you and what you're doing?
So, we're trying. Okay, we've got people out there writing a script. We've talked about it for a long time. I think it would be a fun movie because they would portray Dave and I as the first reality stars. Okay, because what we were doing was certainly real. Outside of that, I'm trying to continue to work in the sport of track and field. I'm broadcasting SEC indoors and outdoors championships on ESPN. I'll do the NCAA championships as well. But, you can see the thing about track and field now is there's a track meet every week, and you can see it on some streaming platform or television. I still coach a number of young athletes, still do a lot of motivational speaking and appearances and things of that nature. So, but folks can follow me on social media and see what I'm up to.
Yeah, great. Hey, if you ever broadcast the ACC finals, say something nice. If my daughter's in it, give her a little plug, throw her a bone.
I did the ACC for a long time, and Boston College doesn't have a lot of sprinters and hurdlers to speak of, but I certainly will if I get a chance to see her run.
I can't wait to hear her name winning the gold. You are going to be
no pressure. No
proudest
pressure.
dad.
Let's get her through her freshman year. I think that's kind of the goal right now. Dan, it's been awesome. Seriously, great story, man. Would love to have. I really want to put this together, Caitlyn and you. Like, maybe we can coordinate. We'll fly you in. If Caitlyn comes in studio, we're going to fly you in if your schedule allows. I think it would be amazing. I think it'd go viral. I think everybody would want to see that, get you guys in the same room. So maybe we'll do it on a golf course or something. Again. Yeah. No, that's the big goal for early 2025. I've wanted Caitlyn on the show for a very long time. And, they keep offering me Kim, and Kim comes over and says, I'll go on. And I said, no, I'm really waiting for Caitlyn. Just hold on. No laughs, no courtesy laughs.
Oh, I thought you were serious.
No,
I was kind of joking. We'll get Kim too, but anyway, yeah. So hey, keep it rocking. Happy holidays.
Thanks, you guys too. Merry Christmas to you. And
one last thing. Who would play you in the movie? The Dan versus Dave movie. Any thoughts? Michael B. Jordan? Who could it be? Who could possibly do it?
You have to think about who's going to look. Who can do track and field events? Okay, I think there's going to be an unknown talent out there, and Michael B's too old now. Just somebody in their mid to early 20s who knows the sport of track and field. I remember when they were beginning to make the Jim Thorpe movie, and they were looking, before COVID started, they had, Martin Sensheimer all set up, and then COVID happened. They didn't make the movie 4 years later. He couldn't play the part because he aged out. But, it's got to be somebody athletic and somebody who's familiar with the sport of track and field.
If Tony Gonzalez was 20 years younger, he could have done it.
Yeah. Do you know who actually played Jim Thorpe in the first Jim Thorpe film? Who played, Dan, do you know who played Jim Thorpe in the first film they did about him?
Burgess Meredith.
Oh, it starts with B. You almost got it.
I can see his face. Burt Lancaster. That's right. Yes.
And then Burt Lancaster did another film called The Swimmer. So,
okay.
Little Hollywood trivia.
Little trivia for you. For you.
All right, Dan, you're an hour away by flight, so look us up when you're in LA for sure, okay?
6 Degrees of Dan O'Brien.
Yeah, great episode, man. And we'll get all your stuff up there,
guys.
too, okay? So thank you so much.
Great to meet you, man.
Dan O'Brien, world's
Cato,
greatest
big fan of yours as well, Cato. Keep doing what you're doing, babe.
I'm going to follow you. Thank you very much on all social media platforms. Love Dan O'Brien.
Yep. Yeah, could you imagine you're in a bar and some hottie strolls up? Yeah, I'm the greatest athlete in the world, and it's like a line, right? But I am.
Dan could probably go to any restaurant and just go, extra napkins, please. Gold medal. Can I? Ketchup packet. Give me extra ketchup packets. I'm Dan O'Brien, gold medal.
All right. Well, that was awesome, and especially hearing from somebody that lived in Moscow, Idaho, right?
It's amazing. And seriously, I actually researched Dan when he said that he was in the booth. He's in the booth with O.J. Simpson. Isn't that? Did you knew that?
I did not know that he broadcast the Olympics with OJ. I didn't know OJ was doing the Olympics for NBC.
Wow.
What a fall. Think about it, Cato. That was a year. No, 2 years from Cato becoming from OJ in the detour he took in his life. That's
I've got you ever go to my if you ever go to my Twitter, the X page, I put on the commercial with Carrie Stroud.
Oh, I'll check it out.
Check it out there. Yeah.
We'll post it too. We'll put a link to it.
Yeah. So pretty amazing though, all the stories. And Tom, you're an athlete, and Dan is a supernatural athlete. He's just, what a relief it must be to actually win the gold in '96, and he still went on to compete. Is to say, I've trained my whole life. I've done, I did 6 marathons. I did this, but when you're done, you go, all right,
I'm good.
I'm good. Right?
I'm not going to work out today. I know, right?
It's like, because it's so, the motivation, the discipline is just to let go of that. And you still stay disciplined, but wow.
Yeah. And it's your life for so long.
Yeah.
Right. That's your job. Your job is to get up and train twice a day, 3 times a day. And then, hey, maybe you can have a couple cheat meals after you retire.
Yeah, and then you feel guilty about that. You
Yeah.
feel guilty about the chocolate or the pizza or whatever. But what an inspiration. So,
yep, great guest. Okay, hey, we got some other good shows to go check out. By the way, Cato and I are working on the drone story. And when we do it, we're going to do it big. We're going to bring in a guest that's heavily involved. So give us a couple more days on that. Go back in the archive. Great episodes with Alex Stein, the United Healthcare murder
Dan Dakich.
story, and then Dan Dakich, and then Adam Sosnick, Sauce from the PBD podcast.
SOS,
so we've had a good run the last 6 weeks or so.
It's been amazing.
All right.
I mean, we had the guests have been just so,
Yep.
with Dan, everybody, just like a motivation. You kind of leave the show going, God, I've
want
got so
more.
much energy.
When's the next one? All right, audio. Spreakers are home. That means iTunes, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast audio wise. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe so you get it. We have about 3 they're going to be launched in the next few days on the audio side. Follow the channel if you're not. We're rapidly approaching 100,000 subscribers, so we're going to keep that train moving. And the K-Train.
The K-Train's always moving. Hop on.
Any stories from your weekend trip to Florida, to Boca Raton?
Yeah, I do have a story. I was quite a few power-hitting people were at this party, but on the flight, we got to, I hate dropping first class, but it was an amazing first class. I'm going to jump into that. Was JetBlue. I have no idea how.
Mint is awesome.
Mint was awesome. And I kept seeing the flight attendants running back and forth with garbage bags. I had no idea what was going on. And then the bathroom just said it was out of order, but it wasn't out of order before. But there was a person in first class. I was in 4, she's in 1, who had a vomit attack. And I mean, vomit was everywhere. So, and then the gentleman that sitting next to that person was at the party. I had no idea. He explained the whole story to me, how he was freaking out because it was vomit, making sure he wasn't getting touched by all the vomit. And it wasn't because of turbulence. It must have just been
like
something.
Multiple explosions. Like she just didn't vomit one time. It was
like it was garbage bag after garbage, and it was continuous.
Could you hear it 3 rows back?
I knew something was up. I didn't smell, but it was so bad.
Wow.
It was actually the film Airplane about the don't eat the fish.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh boy, it was a reality. But he told the story to me at the party. I had no idea it was on the plane, but there were 3 people on that flight from LA at the party.
Yeah, and then you're wondering, is it E. coli? Is it the bubonic plague? I mean, right?
It's like, whoa.
Yeah, let me stay away from there.
Yeah.
All right, hey, thanks everybody. Enjoy.
I'm sorry I ended it with the vomit story.
Yeah, but that is interesting. I've never heard
about
that. Get into the archive. Check out our former episodes. Cato and I will be back for the one and only Cato Caitlyn.
Hello.
I'm Tom Zenner. We'll catch you next time.